everybody. And just to get started, how many people are swimming through their first winter in the bay? Okay, a few. How about their second winter, which is sort of the same as your first winter? Okay. And how many people have swam through winters more than 10 years, say? Okay, a couple of us. So it does take, it's cumulative, the cold acclimation. It's something that takes years and years and years. And also to have the experience to understand what your body is doing and what's right and what isn't right, because a lot of weird things happen when you're hypothermic. Anyway, I was a paramedic. I'm a retired paramedic, so I've taken care of a lot of critically hypothermic patients. And so that's my basic experience with hypothermia, and I've been a club member for 14 years. And I've peeled a lot of people off of the bar, in the shower, in the sauna, like pulled their hand off and steered them into the sauna. So what I've done is just a little basic science about what the hell is going on with your body. When you immediately jump in the water, what's happening while you're swimming, what happens the minute you step out of that water, and then when you're rewarming in a hot shower that feels so good, but you feel like you're going to keel over, what's going on there? So a few different things happening. So it's basic science. And hypothermia is just a subnormal body temperature. When you're talking about it in terms of becoming hypothermic, when you're swimming, we're talking about a lower than normal core temperature. And for the purposes of this, we can talk about the body as having two parts, a core and a shell. Just think of like a giant walnut, a walking, swimming walnut. There's the core, which is the meat of your body. Your brain, your lungs, your heart, liver, kidneys, your abdominal organs. That part of your body operates optimally in a really narrow temperature window, and your body works very, very hard when you get in the water to keep those organs in that tight little window. It doesn't give a shit about your feet, your hands, anything. They could be as cold, as they can get, but as long as your core is preserved. So, and that's just a basic number for, they have mild, moderate, severe hypothermia, but I just lump mild and moderate together, and then the severe hypothermia, which is really, really rarely seen here. I'm trying to think back, and I remember about 20 years ago we did transport a person from the bay in the ambulance to California Pacific to the closest emergency room, who was pulled out during a long swim. It was about a 5-hour training swim. And I had not started swimming in the bay yet, and I thought, oh my God, why would anybody, swim 5 hours in the bay? And so, also always be careful of what you judge, because it's probably going to end up being you. So that's the basic temperature ranges. It doesn't matter here, because we're not taking anybody's temperature. It was really important, what it's going to feel like to you, what it's going to look like when you see somebody else hypothermic. So we're going to have our first quiz question. What do all hypothermic swimmers say when you ask them how they're doing?
Nothing. Fine.
Yeah. Next slide. So that's what they're going to say. And the same thing's going to happen to you, because once your core temperature drops and your brain is out of that optimum little window, it's just not going to work right, and you can't assess how you're doing. And you also can't believe what somebody else that you suspect of being hypothermic because they look funny, assume that they are. I mean, the worst thing that's going to happen is they might bypass the shower and lay in the sauna first. So you really can't go wrong. Okay, and this is an important fact to know, that you can hang out outside today for hours and hours and hours and hours, overnight. You could be walking the streets, and you'll be fine in 50-degree air. But we all know that in 50-degree water, it's a whole different thing, and your body perceives it as a danger, as a stress. It does not say the second you jump in, actually the part of your brain that controls your thermoregulatory system is the hypothalamus. So when I have little comments, my hypothalamus was speaking to me as I was making this slideshow, so there'll be little hypothalamic comments here, and you'll recognize them. So your body reads that as, this crazy person is doing something very dangerous to me, and now I have to take over, obviously. And they want blood to their skeletal muscle, but I'm going to send it to their internal organs, and that's what happens. So that's why your hands get so cold. So now, your body's initial response to when you jump in the water, whether you're swimming for the first time or you've been swimming for 30 years in the bay, is peripheral vasoconstriction. And that's a lot of syllables to explain. All of your shell blood vessels constricting, because your hypothalamus has made the decision after it said, what the F is this person doing? You know, it's like, ugh. It's decided to put the blood in your body where it needs to be, and that's in your core. And it increases heat production a lot, and it takes an extraordinary amount of energy to keep you warm in the water. And that's great that your body is able to provide that, but once you conk out, there's no going back to it while you're in the water. So, and please, if you have any questions or comments, just shout it out. I thought this was a great picture because you can see the difference on your left. That's where your blood supply is when you're swimming. And it doesn't matter what temperature your legs are, it matters what temperature your core is, according to your brain, which wants you to survive, even though you're doing dangerous sports. So, back. It's pretty well distributed. When we're standing here, you know, we have pretty even blood flow everywhere. There's no threat to our core body temperature. But when you swim, it's a big threat to your core temperature, and your body works ferociously keeping your core warm, which it does usually. But and you can see how the further away you get from your core, like your toes and stuff. I don't know. We were actually all looking at the soles of our feet today in the shower, and if you look, some people have totally blanched feet. It looks like a corpse if you've ever examined the soles of feet of a corpse. It's what you call blanched. There's not a drop of blood in them. You know, it's really odd looking. So that's your body in its infinite wisdom. Okay, next slide. Where are we? That's how constricted your blood vessels get. So also, you know, the downside of that is, and actually last week somebody went to the emergency room from the women's sauna, and I'll talk about that as a rewarming issue. Her blood pressure dropped and she passed out in the sauna. And so they took the emergency room, and she was absolutely fine. She was laughing about it. But so the body's response to sustained cold water exposure, now your hypothalamus is saying, uh-oh, this person is staying in the water after they went in, and now they're staying in there. What am I going to do? So it's tremendous amount of energy demands. They're using up all your stored glucose. But what happens is then you're decreasing your energy stores, and your thermoregulatory system, as you go on, begins to decompensate a little bit. And once your core temperature starts to be affected, it's really just a matter of time, and it could be, you know, 30 seconds. It could happen really fast, where your core temperature plummets, you get confused, lethargic, and you develop all the symptoms of hypothermia, but you develop it while you're in the water, and then you're really unable to manage yourself. That's why as a new swimmer, and you're swimming in the winter, you really need to swim with other people until you're really, really familiar with what your body does. You know, there isn't a set protocol. When this happens, when that happens, everybody's different, and you really just have to get to know yourself. So there's a lot of to be said for experience of swimming in cold water. Once that happens, yeah, it just becomes a cycle and it plummets, and the only way to rewarm is to get out of the water and have an external heat source warming you. So whether that's heat packs, whatever. The sauna is the best, hot shower. Another thing that happens, and it's called cold diuresis, and you know, you think because you're in freezing cold water you're not losing fluid, but because all of your blood goes to your core, your kidneys that are responsible for blood pressure and fluid regulation in your body interpret this as fluid overload. So then their job is to regulate that, and they start producing large amounts of urine. So if anybody notices that they pee a lot or in the water, that's why. So you can lose a tremendous amount of fluid that way. So all these things, you know, using up your energy stores, and what happens then, you feel cold, you swim harder. So you're putting more demand on your body, and it already has more of a demand on it, trying to keep you warm, and then you're breathing faster, so you're exhaling heat and moisture every time you exhale, and this just becomes a cycle. So I don't mean to scare anybody, but back to cold diuresis. You can become dehydrated, and it's really important to drink fluids when you get out. So, okay. So now the body's response to leaving the water, now your brain says, oh, the emergency is over. Finally, this jerk has taken us out of this situation that I have had to work so hard to preserve her. But for some reason, as soon as you step out of the water, if it's 50 degrees outside, your body does not detect this anymore as an emergency, and your blood vessels in the periphery in your shell dilate. So that can do a couple of things. But one thing it generally does is it takes all that beautiful warm 37 degree blood that was in your core protecting your organs. It floods it out to your extremities, right past that ice cold skin, and back to your core, and your core temperature can drop when you get out. And that's called after drop. So, and that can happen in a number of different situations. It can happen as soon as you get out of the water. As long as your skin is cold, that's a possibility for after drop. So, or you could get in the shower and it's really hot and the periphery really dilates. And it's strictly a mechanical issue. You know, you have your heart, that's a pump, the blood vessels are the pipes. If you all of a sudden open up all the pipes and you're in this position, the first thing to lose blood supply is your brain. And when you have no blood going to your brain, you're unconscious, you know? You're not acting funny, you're unconscious. You know, if you're just hypothermic, you act weird. And I know I came out of the water once. We did a New Year's Day swim, and those are always a little iffy because the currents could not be right for an Alcatraz, New Year's Day Alcatraz. And it took me an hour and 20 minutes because I was swimming in place at Pier 39 for 20 minutes. I called it Alcatraz to Aquatic Park with a 20-minute layover at Pier 39, swimming in place. And I got out of the water, and there's generally somebody there with hot chocolate, and she looked at me and she said, "Would you like some hot chocolate?" And I was absolutely baffled by the question. I remember standing there staring at her thinking, I don't understand the question. What is, you know, I was just like trying to figure out how to respond to this question that I didn't understand, you know? And I think I just walked away, but I was fine. If somebody said, "How are you?" It's like, "I'm fine." I went and took a shower, I warmed up, and I was fine. But evidently my brain was not working right. You know, because normally on any given day I can respond to somebody offering me a beverage, you know, like yes or no. So your periphery or your shell, the blood vessels dilate again once your hypothalamus sees that you're not in an emergent situation anymore. And it just releases all your core blood supply, goes past your cold skin and back to your internal organs. And after drop. Very common. Okay. And then the body's response to rewarming. You know, it's big sigh, it feels wonderful. But again, because of the peripheral, I call it rewarming syncope. That's the name I came up with. Syncope is just a word for fainting. So, and it's really important because just because you're out of the water doesn't mean something bad couldn't happen. And I'm really a very positive person, by the way. So this is like, I feel like doom and gloom. We haven't even gotten to the death part yet. But so the drop in blood pressure, it's very common, especially if your body's not used to it. And I will talk about the woman who got transported to the hospital last week. She was away from the Cove for about 10 days on vacation. She was traveling. She came back, a little jet lag. She came to swim. She's been swimming for years and years, a few days a week, you know, all throughout the winter. She's an accomplished swimmer, very, very comfortable in the cold water, very smart, you know. And when she came out of the water, she said, "Oh, I think I overdid it." And she started taking a shower, but she said, "Oh, I don't feel good." I'll tell you who it was after. Oh. And she was smart, and there was another swimmer there, and she said, "Go lay down in the sauna." And I will explain why you should not stand up in the shower or sit in the shower if you don't feel good after swimming. Very bad idea. But that used to be a theme going around here, and I hope I'm chipping away at that. But she laid down, and she kind of thought, all right, you know, I'm okay. The other person went and got her some warm water to drink, and she sat up and started drinking the water, and then she passed out. So her blood pressure dropped. The person called 911, which she should have. The swimmer is in her 70s, and she was unconscious. Hopefully, if you ever come across an unconscious person, you wouldn't hesitate to call 911. And she went to the emergency room. She was there for a couple hours. She warmed up. The temperature she told me was they got 35 on her, which isn't that cold, but you know, it's enough to cause a ruckus during your rewarming process that your blood pressure will drop and you go to the emergency room. But you generally, with mild to moderate hypothermia, it doesn't cause unconsciousness. A drop in the blood pressure, which is sort of an inadvertent side effect of rewarming from hypothermia, does. You have to be really critically hypothermic to be unconscious just from your core temperature. So, not that you have to make that distinction at all, but it's just sort of an interesting process that everybody goes through. So, not everybody has a drop in blood pressure, but you know, given the right or the wrong conditions, it can happen to anyone. So you're just getting over a flu, maybe you lost 2 pounds, the water went down a degree, who knows what your response will be. You just have to be smart about it. So, and syncope is just fainting. So it's I wouldn't say it's common. It's not like it happens every day, but this time of the year, people do get woozy afterwards. They say, oh, I don't feel good, and they need to lay down in the sauna. So next, I don't even know what the next slide is. Okay, so these are some of the symptoms of hypothermia. Shivering, that's your body's way to keep warm. We don't shiver in the water because we're swimming, and vigorous exercise is a much better way to keep warm than shivering. So, but if you're not, another thing that happens the second you get out of the water is you're stopping the exercise. So aside from the redistribution of your blood next to your cold skin and back to your core, you're also not exercising. So the generator has stopped. You're not producing heat from exercise. So your body will shiver. And if anybody's noticed, if it takes a while to get into the shower, you could start shivering because your body is saying, would you hurry up and get in the sauna? If you're not, I'm going to start shivering now. So to keep you warm, it's actually very, very, it's a very good way to keep warm. So lack of coordination, and that's not to be confused with frozen fingers, because you could have the claw, but your core temperature could be totally normal. Anybody, like, your hands get so frozen you can only use your fingers as a tool. Like you take your cap off like this, you try to get your thumb under there and take the cap off. So, we all do it. It happens this time of the year. But, so not that, but a lack of coordination. A flat affect. If somebody's walking out of the water like this, that's not good. You lose your personality, you're confused, like you can't answer a simple question, or you start babbling, word salad they call it, you just start throwing out words. Slurred speech, not because your lips are frozen, but, slurred speech. This also sounds like, not the shivering, but stroke symptoms too, and not the pale ashy lips. But it's very strange when you see somebody really, really hypothermic. It's odd. And these symptoms really flow between, different core temperatures. So it's not a set thing that happens to everybody. A lot of it depends on your age, your underlying health, and that kind of thing. Pale, ashy lips, we don't look great getting out of the water, You have the women have the beard, your skin is a weird color, you have like goosebumps all over you, and cold skin. If you've ever been warm in the sauna and had a cold swimmer come and sit next to you, it's just radiating off of them. Although your core and also your extremities and your shell can get freezing, and you could still have a normal core temperature, but that can change quickly. So you need to be smart and be ahead of it. Feeling of impending doom, restlessness, it's just like, oh God, I don't feel good, And so, next slide. Oh yeah, the umbles. So stumbling, grumbling, mumbling, fumbling. That's what hypothermic patients do. They can be grouchy, they'll be fumbling with stuff, stumbling like this, and fumbling with things. So that's easy to remember. So you really want to, depending if the patient's in the shower or in the bay and you're a co-pilot or something, you want to remove them from the cold source, and you want to prevent further heat loss. So first thing, get them out of the water. If they have wet clothing on, take it off. Cover them with everything. If you're in the boat, don't let any wind get on them. And cover them. If you have an external heat source available, and that could be your body or some heat packs on one of the Zodiacs, those are great. And I'll tell you, I have had people kind of wrap themselves around me when I was cold, and it feels really, really good. It's so warm, you don't think, because you get cold right away, but actually the heat really does transfer. If they have a thermal cap on that's wet, get that off, but cover their head and cover every bit of skin. You don't want any wind hitting them. You really have to stop, prevent further heat loss, because they're on a spiral down, and you really want to cut the spiral. If they're in the sauna, lay them flat and give them sugary fluids. I came in here once and I found half a banana and some potato chips. So that's perfect, some sugar, potassium, carbohydrates, and sodium, and water. So, all right, next slide. So severe hypothermia. So this is what I gave it the term, the Frankenstein walk. What happens is when your core temperature drops really, really low, your muscles become rigid, and they'll be walking like this. They most likely won't be that conscious at that core temperature, but if you're a young, healthy person, you can maintain your mental status at such low temperatures that you will be walking and saying, I'm really cold. So we actually had a patient once who was saying, I'm really cold. It's like, okay, yeah, it's 20 degrees out, I'm cold too, you know. But he got up to walk, and he was a young, healthy guy. He got up to walk, and he had the completely rigid. I mean, he would have just fallen over. And his core temperature was in the 80s, I forget, but it took hours and hours for him to walk up in the emergency room. Don't let them walk or move. Other signs are a slow pulse, loss of consciousness, decreased respirations, minimally responsive. And these people you want to keep in the sauna. Well, actually, next slide. So for that, you call 911, and hopefully that'll be obvious if somebody's not conscious or not talking or anything like that. Make sure you update 911 dispatch for any changes in location. Somebody's at the door, you don't want them ringing the doorbell to get in. Get some information about the patient's history, well, the swimmer, who's now a patient. Keep the swimmer lying down in the sauna, provide added body heat. Don't give them anything PO orally if they're stuporous or obtunded. Turn them on the side if they're nauseous or vomiting. And I don't like the last line, but I have to put it in there. So I'm the bearer of bad news. So worst case scenario. But next slide. Really this is all, we have so much fun at this club, and swimming in the bay, it's one of the greatest adventures you can do, and you can do it and be very smart about it. You don't have to go crazy and do silly things like, oh, I'm going to swim here today, and you've never been there, it's your first, second, or third winter only, and you're not that familiar with how your body responds. So just be smart, and Sue and Jeff will talk a lot about nutrition and before and after things.